What's up guys, my name is Brandon and here is a real estate beginner tutorial where I really cover the blueprints and outline the basics of what's needed in order to prepare for and actually invest in property the right way. With this, I'm going to keep it basic and not overcomplicated and give you a general overview of how to actually get started and some of the critical things you actually need to know. Investing in property is a long-term play and it's a huge investment sum, so it's something that you need to start planning and actually strategizing for well before you even have the money saved up for a deposit, which I'll actually go over in this video. So before I get started, I am a property investor myself and I do consider myself a fairly borderless investor. I've bought and sold over 17 properties across Australia, Singapore, as well as the Philippines over the past decade, and it's really much a core part of my overall wealth building strategy. Now, I've made some great decisions and I've made some not good, but I've learned along the way, and hopefully I'll share these with you guys in future videos so that you guys can get as much out of my own personal experiences as possible. Although different countries obviously have different property markets and different laws, the fundamentals and process to actually approach investing in property are actually fairly universal. So from building an overall plan to financing to property growth fundamentals to actually managing your cash flows. So let's get started. So the first thing to do is to make a plan. So before you start, you need to decide what this investment is going to do for you. In order to achieve your goals, you must actually first articulate what they are, and more importantly, set yourself some deadlines to achieve them as well. So that actually allows you to create a plan by providing an end date to actually aim towards. So for example, if you're looking to replace your income and retire on your investments within, let's just say 15 years, you have to start with a 15-year plan and then break down that long-term plan into kind of weekly, monthly, and yearly goals. So not only does this provide you with a clear plan of action, it also makes your goals much more manageable and also kind of prevent you from being a little bit too overwhelmed with the enormity of the task and the sums as well. So when I first started investing in property, I started with a 6-figure passive income goal to generate from my properties, and I actually broke it down into 3 distinct phases. So the first one being the accumulation phase, where you actually go out and buy all your properties. The second being a consolidation phase, where you kind of stop buying, but you start paying down the debt. And the third phase is actually where you start enjoying the passive income that your properties start to generate as well. So the next critical thing is actually getting your finances in order. So there's a saying that property investing is actually more of a game of finance than in the actual physical property itself, and I actually really do believe that, because property can actually be a really emotional thing, because it's people's homes as well, and as an investor you actually need to be really on top of the numbers and really take the emotion out of it. So first up, you obviously need to save that deposit. Saving can actually be difficult at the best of times, but if you're really going to delve into property investing, then you really need to be good at it. So usually lenders will also require evidence of your savings from the past 3 months to 6 months. These will actually become an invaluable tool when you actually start approaching them as well. So other things to do will be to consider like reducing your credit card limit and get rid of any kind of unnecessary expenses so that your kind of cash flow on paper looks a lot better. Also, before you even think about looking at what property to buy, you actually need to get a pre-approval from the bank. This is basically a formal indication from a bank that they will actually lend you a certain amount of money. It also gives you some assurance of the amount of money you can actually borrow, because the last thing that you actually want to do is go out and buy a property and put a deposit down and then realize that the banks are actually not going to lend you the balance that you need to actually complete the purchase. You also need to factor in the overall acquisition costs involved, which a lot of people don't think about. This will actually need to be saved with your deposit funds to actually complete your purchase. So for our Australian purchases, we actually factored in an additional 5% on top of the purchase price to actually cover additional acquisition costs, such as legal and conveyancing fees, pest and building inspections, stamp duty on the property, and your depreciation schedule as well if you need one. In Singapore, due to the government cooling measures, the stamp duty can actually be really high, so make sure you speak to your lawyer or mortgage broker to actually understand the costs before you actually delve into a purchase. So the third important thing is getting the right mortgage. Going through a mortgage broker before applying for a pre-approval is actually a really good idea. We use mortgage brokers for all of our loans, both in Australia as well as Singapore, because they really just give you a better insight into the overall lending environment, and they actually give you a good choice across different lenders and really just takes the headache out of preparing loan documents. A mortgage broker basically serves as the kind of middleman between the bank or the lender and yourself as the borrower, and basically handles all of the time-consuming processes of securing a loan and helping you gather all of the sort of paperwork that the banks require. These guys actually apply for loans as a living, so they know exactly what banks look for. So they will help you basically put together your loan application and also recommend the best loan structure and lender based on your individual circumstances as well. So be sure that you actually work with one that actually works with investors and actually works with a wide range of lenders and also is kind of attuned to your needs and investing strategy as well. Mortgages are way more than just the amount of money that you borrow and the interest rate from the bank, which is kind of like the main thing a lot of people look at. So the first thing to look at is a competitive interest rate. Even a very small percentage makes a very big difference to your monthly repayments. Principal or interest-only mortgage repayments. So if you actually want to pay down the debt on your loan, or you actually just want to pay enough to service the interest itself, we all will actually need to all eventually pay down the loan, but interest-only strategy is actually a good way to actually preserve your cash flow to allow you to hold on to the property for longer. I've recently personally switched a lot of my loans from interest only to principal and interest to actually start paying down the debt on my loans now as well. You can also decide between fixed or variable interest rates or a mixture of both. A fixed interest rate basically maintains the same payments, so you have a bit more certainty, but variable loans allow you to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of refinancing, selling the property, as well as adjusting your interest rates as well. Another thing to consider is that the bank allows you to make extra repayments. So some people want a bit more flexibility to actually make extra payments when, let's just say, you get a bonus or something, so you can actually pay off your loan a little bit more quickly. Unfortunately, many lenders actually punish you if you make early repayments, so it's good to check before you actually sign up for the loan. So some home loan providers actually offer a mortgage offset account, which basically allows you to put cash that you have in an offset mortgage savings account, and that actually is set against the loan principal itself. So this can actually mean considerable savings for the duration of your mortgage. So for example, if you have a $350,000 loan and you have $50,000 in this savings offset account, you can actually use that to offset your loan. So you actually are only paying interest on $300,000 of that loan itself. The home loan provider then recalculates and reduces your interest repayments accordingly. So there's obviously a lot to consider. So make sure you speak to a good mortgage broker and they'll be able to explain this to you a lot better than I can, and the benefits of these features and all the different banks as well. The fourth thing to note is that you need to review your cash flow. This is perhaps one of the most important aspects to actually get right and also be on top of before actually investing in property. Cash will get you in the property market, but cash flow will actually keep you in the game and actually allow you to hold the property for as long as you need to while the actual property increases in value. And investors should always know how much the property will cost on both a weekly, a monthly, as well as a yearly basis. It's actually best to sit down and actually conduct a cash flow analysis before actually purchasing an actual investment property. You actually need to have a clear picture of exactly how much rent you actually can expect to collect and how much all the associated costs are actually going to cost you as well. So you need to be comfortable to actually make up any shortfall from your own pocket on a monthly basis to maintain this investment. This will substantially minimize your risk and actually ensure that you can actually hold the property for the medium to long term without the property costing you too much, while also reaping the potential of capital growth returns. So aside from the purchase costs that I mentioned earlier, you also need to carefully consider all your ongoing costs as well to actually own, manage, and maintain that property. These are things like your interest payments. This is usually the largest ongoing cost of any property investment, especially at the start of the journey when your debt levels are actually at the highest. Property management. So you probably don't want to manage the property yourself on a day-to-day basis and attend to all your tenants' requirements. So if you don't do it yourself, you need to and I highly recommend you to actually appoint and outsource this to a professional property manager. A good property manager will essentially organize basically everything for you, from the collection of rent to organizing and overseeing any repairs and maintenance that needs to be done. In Australia, we have property managers for all of our properties, and they cost anywhere between kind of 6 to 11% of the rental income, depending on which capital city they are in and what kind of services they offer as well. In Singapore, there's not really a market for property managers, and in our experience, the leasing agent just kind of helps facilitate some of the items that the tenant requires. Insurance is another big one. Landlord insurance is a type of insurance policy that is specifically designed to actually protect those who own investment properties from the risks that actually come with you renting out that property. So this works in conjunction with kind of a home and contents insurance, but basically cover kind of any loss or damage that actually arises from your tenants, as well as kind of loss of rental income or theft or damage of the property that you face as a landlord. Other things like council rates and water rates. So unless you don't want your bins collected, you actually have to pay those rates. Land tax is another cost that you'll have to bear. This is an annual cost based on the cost of the land itself that you'll have to pay to the government every year. There's also body corporate and strata fees, and these are also charged quarterly. These are basically charged mainly for apartments and units and townhouses that basically cover all of the maintenance of all the shared and common areas of the property itself, like the balconies, the lifts, the gardens. So overall property maintenance, this is probably one of the painful ones when you get a big maintenance bill. And this is basically your responsibility as a landlord to ensure that your rental property is in a livable condition for the tenants. So this means that any repairs that is required to make it habitable, you'll need to do it. And a lot of the time these are not covered by insurance because it's just kind of general wear and tear. So rental vacancies is another cost that you'll probably have to factor in, and you can't kind of just assume that your property will be rented out for a whole entire year. So factoring in, anywhere between sort of 2 to 3 weeks, at least a year, so that your overall kind of yearly projection takes into consideration any sort of vacancies that your property is going to go through. So as you can see, there are actually a lot of expenses to consider that you may not have been aware of, and not knowing these can actually make or break your property investment. Simple as that. Cash flow is a huge reason people actually end up selling their investments too early, because they didn't look at that overall cash flow to maintain this investment, and they're forced to sell before they can actually get some capital growth on the property. Even after your initial purchase, you always need to revisit your cash flow every year and discuss ways to actually improve and reduce the cash flow bleed, if there is one, every year, so that you can try and improve it. If you're interested to actually see how this works on one of my own personal property investments in Australia, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'll be releasing a lot more videos about how I actually manage my own personal property portfolio in Australia as well as Singapore. So finally, when you get around to actually purchasing a property itself, you have to purchase based on fundamentals for future growth and also stay informed. So what's important before you start looking at specific properties is to ensure that you're actually well informed. In today's world, there's so much information online at our fingertips, there's actually no excuse to not do your own research. Understanding the market will be crucial to actually make the right decision and the right choice in which kind of property you actually invest in. Being informed also means steering clear of any kind of get-rich-quick schemes and property spookers. If someone's promising you guaranteed returns overnight and, Ferraris and bikini babes, walk away, because the only person that's actually getting rich is them. So it's important to remember to not get too emotionally attached to a property and look at the fundamentals of the investment for future potential growth as well as rental increase. So location, you have to make sure that the property's in a well-tenanted area and has experienced historic kind of property price growth as well. Demographics is another important one, where the property is suitable for a certain type of tenants that are actually living in the area. Infrastructure, so to ensure that there's appropriate infrastructure in place around the property itself, such as transport, shops, cafes, schools, that kind of thing. Also looking at what development is planned for that area of that property that you're looking at is important. This will also affect kind of like the tenancy rates and the price growth that you're going to get. But you also want to be careful of overdevelopment of the same type of property that you're investing in, because that will just result in an oversupply, which is more competition in terms of rentals as well as sales when you eventually do sell it. If you're not one to actually carry out all this kind of due diligence yourself, then what I would recommend personally is to engage a buyer's agent. A buyer's agent is basically someone that represents the interest of you, specifically the buyer, to actually purchase this investment property, as opposed to the seller's agent. They basically do all the research for you and ensure that this investment property is aligned with your overall kind of property investment strategy. They conduct the viewings, they do recommendations for you and show you kind of benchmarking as well. And they actually also take care of all the negotiations. So basically hold your hand and basically facilitate the whole process all the way through. They can actually cost anywhere between kind of $6, maybe up to sort of $10, $11, $12,000, depending on what kind of property that you're investing in and the value itself as well. But a lot of people will argue that actually they save you a lot more in terms of the negotiation and ensuring that you actually don't buy the wrong property. Personally, in Australia, we use buyer's agents when we were purchasing in new cities that we were not that familiar with or physically there, because obviously I'm here based in Singapore. So we did see that value in terms of their kind of local knowledge and know-how in the market that we were actually buying in. They also helped us do a kind of due diligence checking and gave us kind of peace of mind that we were making the right decision based on our own research as well. Some people love to do everything themselves, and I do sometimes, but it should actually come as no surprise that actually getting a good team around you will be one of the most important things to do when you actually invest in your property correctly. From an investment savvy mortgage broker up front to help you with your financing, to a buyer's agent that will ensure you don't make the mistake in choosing the wrong asset, to a good property manager to actually ensure that your investment is always tenanted and kept in a good condition. They basically all form part of your team. And at the same time, you need to always understand that property investing is not a get-rich-quick scheme. And to actually achieve your financial goals, you have to actually slowly build a substantial asset base and not to kind of chase short-term cash gains like many beginning investors do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you are a beginner, I hope this video opens your eyes to more things that you need to consider before jumping into property. And if you are a seasoned investor, thanks for the patience to hanging in there to the end of this video. I hope it kind of reinforces what you guys have done already. And if you've got any kind of tips or tricks or advice for me, please leave a comment in the comment section below this video. And if you're keen about learning more about property investment, please subscribe to my channel as I set out to actually share as much as I possibly can about my own investment journey so that others can actually benefit and make better decisions of your own investing. So until next time, peace.